Hey y'all, welcome back to the Skookum Report. I'm Bob, and I have a couple really good Bigfoot encounter stories for you this evening. These again come from Bobbie Short's material, who was shared with me by her friends and family, and I want to continue to thank them, and I consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to share her material. I just want to say Mary Fabian's part 2 of her interview from the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project, that's going to be out in about a week, give or take a day or two, but that should be really good. I really enjoyed talking to her. This first story is titled The Boogeyman, and it comes from Terrace Bay, northwestern Ontario, Canada, and it was in 1968. And this gentleman's name is Edward, and he writes, "What I am about to write I have only spoke of once to my mother the following morning after it happened, and I was told that it was just my imagination and that I watched too many scary movies. And when I insisted that it was real, I was told not to speak of it anymore, nor to anyone about it. I spent much of my childhood in a small town called Terrace Bay. Back then the population was about 2,000 people, and it was in northwestern Ontario, Canada. I remember that during the late summer and throughout the fall season, a curfew was put into place to ensure that all children were indoors once it started to get dark. Now, we as children were never told exactly why the curfew came into effect, and my father, being a strict European man, told my brother and my sister and I that the curfew was needed to protect us against the boogeyman, who would search the night for children that were disobedient and not in their beds after 9 p.m. Daggone. One evening after 9 p.m., I got up for a glass of milk, and as I closed the fridge, I heard what sounded like trash cans tipping over outside. I immediately opened the back door, and to my very near right was a large mother bear and her 2 cubs feasting on the scraps from our dinner. My mother, hearing the door open, came quickly to close it and told me, "Now you know why there's a curfew." So now I knew the reason for the curfew. Or did I? Many other curfew nights followed with little or no disturbances, until one early August night. I shared my bedroom with my older brother, whose bed was near the bedroom window of my parents' bungalow. As usual, he had been reading and he had fallen asleep. I called out to him to turn off the table lamp between the window and his bed, but he was in such a deep sleep he couldn't hear me. I got up out of bed and went to turn off the light. Upon approaching the night table, I saw the silhouette of a tall, somewhat hunched back, long, hairy-armed prowler with an ape-like profile moving towards the gate of our backyard. As it was passing by my window, my hand trembled as I reached to open the clear white curtain just a little so I could see the figure's whole face. I moved the curtain, and it stopped and turned to face the window. Terrified, I quickly turned off the light, stumbled onto the edge of my brother's bed, only to fall onto the floor. I got up and ran to my bed and jumped in it and threw the covers up over my head. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. And since we had never heard of the Sasquatch or Bigfoot before, I thought maybe there was some truth to the boogeyman after all. The next morning, I heard my mother outside with my father. She was upset that her garden had been completely trampled on and that part of the back wood wire fence separating the bush in our yard had been plowed over as if a bulldozer had gone right through it. At first, I heard a large moose in the conversation, only to finish with my father saying, "It must have been a very large bear. Just look at the tracks in the garden and on the lawn leading down to the street." Since we lived close to a steep hill, we called it the Drop, and that led down to a part of Lake Superior, and it was most likely whatever it was that made its escape down the Drop and onto the woods around the lake. My father left with the neighboring men towards the woods at the bottom of the Drop. I told my mother what I had seen the night before. The expression on her face did not match the stern advice she gave me. No, her expression was similar to mine, and I could swear that she too had seen the figure at a time in her past. I never spoke to her again about what I had seen, and yet in my mind and in my heart, I know it was no animal or human outside my window. That late summer night, I believed that was a Bigfoot when I was only 7 years old, and I'll never forget that. Wow. That guy's name was Edward from North Ontario, Canada, I believe he said. This next one is titled Late at Night in Canada. And this one's also from Bobbie Short's material. And it's by a lady named Alex Michael. And she says, this is a true story. She says, my family has always been notorious for doing things at odd hours. And as you may well know, the strangest things always happen late at night. And it was an unusually warm autumn some years ago, and at 16 years of age, I had just finished a summer job as an arts and craft camp counselor. The only thing left to do was to pick up my rather large trunk filled with my belongings. Unable to fit such a large trunk inside the VW Beetle I had purchased just a few weeks before, my mother had volunteered to transport it from the mountains back to the city in the larger of the family cars. Summer camp was a very wild place for me, with the staff partying every night until the wee hours of the morning. And my room was near the entrance of the staff residence where all these parties took place. By late July, sleep-deprived, party wimps like myself had been weeded out. So I just went and built a single mattress platform in the woods and then covered it with polyplastic. It was about a 15-minute walk through the dense forest to get there from the residence on the road. Bow Valley Provincial Park had an undisturbed, protected forest, and it was only a stone's throw away. It was there that my mother and a small dog named Willow and myself were going to retrieve my trunk, and it was 3 o'clock on a Monday morning. Why 3 in the morning? I could say maybe it was the heat, but it was mostly because my father had not yet been told that the car would be leaving town. There was also my adolescent fear that knowledge of the platform construction would somehow reflect itself in my summer paycheck that I had not yet received. My mother had to be at work by 6:30 that morning, so we had less than an hour to complete this covert action. As we approached the highway turnoff, a sliver of the moon cast a glowing border around the southwestern Alberta's Mount Yamnuska. Driving several miles along the gravel road, the camp looked deserted. The summer staff had cleared out several weeks before, and a handful of permanent staff were either taking days off in the city or asleep in the cabins several miles from the summer campsite. Angling off on the side of the road, my mother left the headlights on and pointing it towards the trees, the lights, and there was some discussion about taking the 20-pound dog named Willow for protection. However, Willow's track record for wandering off severely threatened a successful completion of the mission. Plus, very uncharacteristically, the dog named Willow refused to get out of the car and was now partially hidden underneath the driver's seat. Car headlights were of no value after the first few seconds of meandering through the forest. We had a flashlight, but I was having difficulty remembering the exact location. The 15-minute walk turned into a 30-minute skin-scraping bushwhack, but finally we arrived at the isolated platform, even though the flashlight batteries were now dead. It was pitch dark, and I assured my mother that all needed to be done was to take down the polyplastic rain cover and carry back the mattress in the trunk, and it should only take 2 trips. She was noticeably silent as we began working in the darkness. My mother began untying strings securing to the poly on the ground, and I was kneeling on the top of the 4-foot-high platform. Stretching up to reach some tangled binder twine knots that were tied to a tree, a pungent smell suddenly flooded the air, and my eyes moved from the knots to a tall length of plastic. There, distorted through the semi-transparent polyplastic, was a huge shadow only about 7 feet away from me. And with the 4-foot platform and me kneeling on top, the creature was easily at eye level. A split second later, there was an incredibly loud screaming roar. Although I know nothing to describe it, I guess I could say the sound was like a peacock scream, a bear growl, and a lion roar, all somehow combined. I can't tell you if I screamed, and I can't tell you much of anything other than my eyes continued to peer through the plastic as this massive shadow, my 5'3" tall mother had somehow leaped up into the air and was now on the platform beside me. That's a mother's love, protecting her son. Whatever it was finally turned and walked slowly away on its hind feet. We continued watching as each heavy step could be heard contacting the ground. There were no visible ears, just a sparse mohawk-like fringe sprouting up from the tapering top of the creature's head. From behind, the upper body appeared massive, and it continued to walk upright until disappearing into the trees. And we stayed on top of the platform motionless for some time after, and then finally I started ripping down the plastic. I have no idea what my mother did during the next 40 to 50 seconds, but my next memory was power walking through the forest, balancing a single mattress on the top of my head and with one hand on the mattress and the other hand carrying the trunk. I assumed my mother was holding up the other end of the trunk. It was still pitch dark. With Willow still hidden under the driver's seat, it was a very quiet drive home. Late at night, they say that your mind can play tricks on you, but I am certain of what I saw. Brown bears had been in the area that summer, but I have never, ever seen a bear walk upright that smoothly or for that length of time. Or could it have been a very large, long-furred man standing over 7 feet in height? I say man because intuition tells me that the creature was a male. Could it have been a Sasquatch that night? I believe it was. I will never really know for sure, but you can bet that I will keep telling the story as if it were. Man, that was good. That was really good. You guys, I appreciate you coming to listen, and I just want to tell you, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and leave some comments, and talk to me. I appreciate meeting all of you guys. I've met quite a few really good people, and if you or anybody you know has an encounter story or any type of Bigfoot sighting or story, like about Bigfoot, put it in an email and shoot it to me at skookumreport@gmail.com. That's skookumreport@gmail.com. And I'll be sure to get it up on the show for you. It's not a problem, and this is a safe place to share your encounter stories with other people who understand and other people who are interested, and without any type of ridicule whatsoever. And if there is anything on the comment section, I will block them. It's that simple. So I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you very soon. And I just want to say God bless you all and take care. Thanks for listening to the Skookum Report. Bye, guys.